see anything.
I know.
All right. Well, it looks like we are live. Welcome everybody to our spooky Ask Me Anything live stream for the Red Nation podcast slash Red Power Hour. I will be today's host, Justine Tiba, calling in from Acoma Pueblo. And we have right now we have our co-host from Red Power Hour. If y'all want to do a quick intro. Melanie, then Elena.
What's up, everyone? I am Melanie. I'm one of the co-hosts, Melanie Yazzie. One of the co-hosts of Red Power Hour, calling in from Minnesota, Mokoche, otherwise known as the Twin City, Minnesota. I kind of have like a pseudo like grandma vibe going on. I actually wanted to go get sunglasses, but like I'm wearing my glasses, so I wouldn't be able to see anything. I'm unprepared is all I'm saying. I've had kind of like this emo week. I've been traveling a lot. I fucking love Halloween, but it's just been a really rough week, and I'm kind of scrambling here on the day, but I'm happy to be here. I'm ready for all the spookiness and all the stories. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie. Sangitamu. My name is Elena Ortiz, co-host of Red Power Hour, calling in from Ogapoge Owinge. And I also am slightly unprepared, but came up with my warm winter hat and found these sunglasses. And so I am a steampunk skinwalker.
Me.
Dang.
All right. Skinwalkers are now steampunk aesthetic.
Anything can be steampunk. You just throw a little color at it and some screws and cogs, and we're good to go.
Yeah. And I am native goth girl. You will, as a native goth girl, it is probably one of the spookiest roles you can hold as a native woman. You will be outcasted. Ooh. You will be accused of being a witch. Ooh. And native uncles will fetishize you. Ooh.
The biggest nightmare of all.
Yeah, so this is the scariest thing I can be. All right. Well, welcome. Today is going to be a fun one. We have some questions from patrons on Patreon. So if you're a supporter of the Patreon, as always with our live streams, you get first priority in asking questions for the live stream and posting them. So we will be answering questions from the Patreon. We have links to the Patreon in all of our bios. If you want to sustain our work, if monthly through Patreon, please sign up and support the podcast. And another announcement we have before we start the show is Red Media is hiring an executive director. So please send the application link to anybody you know who might fit this role. Red Media is trying to grow, and we're trying to just get someone new on our team. You can read the job description at www.redmedia.press. The first image you will see is a link that will take you to the job description. And thank you all who are pouring into the chats on YouTube. We see your comments. Thank you so much for joining. If you have questions that you want to ask either of our hosts, Nick will be joining us later. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And does anybody else have anything they would like to say before we move forward and start with our first question?
Woohoo!
Ow!
Just that, like, I don't know. I know that like next month starts tomorrow, right? November is Native American Heritage Month in the US, but you know what Native people would really prefer is if Halloween lasted a whole month. Because Native people love Halloween. And like, if we could make that happen, that would be so much more preferable than this bullshit recognition that we have in the US. Because, like, we could tell spooky stories all month long. That'd be dope. And then you like wouldn't have to deal with like Thanksgiving because that's the dumbest settler holiday. So yeah, just replace all of it with Halloween for a month straight.
Just dress up and go outside and scare your neighbors, man. That's what I love, creeping around in the dark and like just scaring people. We are the original Red Scare, right?
Yeah. One time it's you know, as an Indigenous person, it's like you're wearing a Halloween costume all year. Sometimes you walk into to a building or a restaurant, and you know, it instills the flight or flight from a lot of our settler folk out there.
No, for real. I mean, how can we have a Red Nation Halloween live stream special without talking about politics? You want to talk about like haunting, right? It's like you walk into a space where like settlers aren't used to Native people still existing because they're like, I thought we killed all of you. Yeah, and they just
you
get
guys
you.
were zombies.
I thought you were zombies, and so they look at you like an actual ghost or an actual zombie.
It is true.
Boo, bitch. We're still here.
Oh, bitch.
Still here.
Boo, bitch.
And we want land back. All right.
I'm still thinking about getting land back tattooed on my knuckles. Well, meet land and meet back.
When Melanie and I were at Pyramid Lake for the John Redhouse book tour, we actually drove to a part of a tribal only authorized area of the lake, and Melanie said, "I got your permission right here."
Oh God, I did say that.
Yeah. I always think of that.
This is per and this is mitt.
I got your permit right here.
Your Dang.
All right. Well, thank you, Alexander. I remember the pre-goth days. It was called Dark Wave, and in Germany, the fans were not called goth, but grufties, as in gruft meaning crypt. Interesting. I never heard that. Thank you.
No.
So, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, for folks who don't know, goth style is like very popular on the res. At least in the Southwest, like there are a lot of goth kids. Even the Zoomers are still into goth. So yeah.
No, okay. So I went to the Alice Cooper, what's the other Judas Priest show in Albuquerque.
Of course you did.
I got invited.
What are you, like a 50-year-old?
No, but my friends are.
Hey, I saw Judas Priest like 40 years ago.
The audience was almost entirely Native people. Yeah. Native people are metalheads, goths, like always alt to the core. In fact, instead of wearing this lacy type thing, I should have wore my oversized black sweater so I could do the sleeve thing.
No,
shy Native girl things. Okay, well, let's get to our first question, and this comes from a patron Aram. He asks, "Do you have a short tale to tell, or maybe retell about when you first heard of Palestine and/or anything in the Palestinian cultural universe? Like, I remember a day when I drove, me, Palestinian and queer, with an old friend who is Lakota and queer, from West Hollywood to San Francisco, queers, OMG. And he's telling me all the stuff about his family, way back story and culture, like, and quote, and they stole and are stealing all of our land, etc. And then he asked me more about my Palestinian family. And I'm like, yeah, they stole and are stealing all our land. And he says, that's funny. Your thing sounds awfully familiar to my thing. Fascinating. And then we put a pin in it till the next year when lots of our favorite activist friends nudged us to be even more outlandishly oh God, I don't know what that says. I'm sorry. Anyways, And either way, thanks for all you do. Strengths and comforts and motivations to you all. Aw, okay. I read the wrong question. I was supposed to ask a different one, but I think that's a really wholesome one to open up with. And it is also spooky because the tale between indigenous people, Turtle Island, and indigenous people, Palestine, is one big horror story, TBH.
Yeah, fuck settler colonialism. Okay, so first of all, can I go first, Elena? Is that cool?
Of
All right.
course.
Palestine, until full Palestinian liberation. That's always our commitment as a red nation. Yeah, I'm gonna try to tell this story correctly because I haven't thought about it. This happened about 3.5 years ago. I don't know if this is gonna be a short story. You know, I can be verbose for sure. But I had just left New Mexico. And I took half an academic year off, so the spring semester of 2022, and then of course the summer term before I moved to Minnesota to take my new position at the University of Minnesota at that time. And I was traveling around the Pacific Northwest, and I was like going through a big transition in my life. And so I don't know, I was kind of like discovering parts of myself again, or like parts of myself that I hadn't kind of like been acquainted with in a long time. I was like 40 years old or something when this happened. And I remember I made this comment to, I think it was like a Red Nation comrade I'm close to that I was talking to at the time about, I had this dream where I looked down at my hands. And no, this actually happened at Kettle Dance. Yeah, see, now I'm remembering the story. I was at Kettle Dance, which is this like ceremony that I haven't been to in a while, but it happens every spring. It's like calling the thunder back up in Pine Ridge. So I'm Navajo, not Lakota, so I may get some of these details wrong. But I remember I was talking to someone I had not seen in a couple of years at Kettle Dance, and they looked at my hands and they told me that I had like grandma hands. Like my hands looked really different. And it was really interesting that year at Kettle Dance because I kept having these like feelings that I was like past versions of myself and the future versions of myself. This is yoded. I'm just telling you this story is straight up yoded, but it's a Halloween spooky special. So I felt both simultaneously like a child and like a grandma that year. And I think it's just because like I was going through this really transformative time in my life. It was a really difficult time in my life. Things had been changing a lot. And about a month later, I was in Seattle on a Zoom call with some comrades talking about land back and intersections on like how we can organize land back in Palestine, land back in Turtle Island. And I was having a conversation. A Palestinian comrade who I've known for a long time was in that conversation. And she's always been kind of like a little bit clairvoyant. Like, you know, you get that vibe from some people where you're like, they have the third eye or whatever. And she was talking about something. We're like organizers, right? So we're like on task. We're like talking about like the thing, the project, or the program that we had to organize. And all of a sudden she stopped talking. No shit. Her face like changed. Her expression changed. This is over Zoom. And then she just went into this monologue about her grandmother's hands. And she started talking about how her Palestinian grandmother, she remembered her grandmother's hands and how her grandmother's hands, I don't know, like would provide so much like comfort, would provide comfort and care, and how that had been like stripped, right, by the occupation. And she talked about her grandmother's hands for about 3 minutes, completely out of pocket, not even remotely related to what we had just been talking about. And then all of a sudden she like literally like flipped back into where she was. And she kind of went like this. She was startled and she was like, what was I just talking about? I was like, dude, you're just talking about like your grandmother's hands. And she was like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, why would I talk about that? And so then I told her this whole story about how like a month earlier at Kettle Dance, I had this experience of like also told and then looking down at my own hands as being like, and the actual term was my grandmother's hands. And so like we freaked out, we got super yoded. The whole planning conversation was derailed because then we went into this whole conversation too about the red line, because this was, so Red Nation has gatherings a couple of times a year where the entire organization comes together and we talk through like all of the big strategy and the big stuff, you know, like what are the future directions of the organization, what are major priorities and campaigns and stuff. And that May, around the same time that Kettle Dance happened, we had a big gathering in the Southwest. And I remember a couple of comrades were coming in Rapid City, and they had a really crazy flight. I think it was like between Denver and like where they were landing. And they thought they were going to die. Like the turbulence was so intense. The weather was really, really bad. And I remember like when I looked up on the weather or whatever, the Doppler, and I don't know if like the gradations of the color for the severe weather patterns, but it was this like red line you could see that went kind of from like the Black Hills essentially down to where comrades were gathering. And I remember we actually used the phrase the red line, like, oh, this looks like the red line. It was like literally a direct line between the Black Hills and like where Red Nation was coming together. And so we were kind of like yoded about that because, whoa, there's a weird connection here. There's something going on here. And, you know, some of like the spirits that you get into relationship with around time are like thunder beings, you know, the spirits that come back in the spring and the summer, the beings that kind of like maybe cause that kind of tumultuous weather we understand as weather. I shit you not, in this conversation, fast forward like about a month to a conversation with our Palestinian comrade, she went into this like something like literally took over her to like talk about her grandma hands. She was just like, she told this story about how, forgive me, maybe our Palestinian relatives who are listening know, there's like a mountain in Palestine. It has like a very important significance for Palestinian people. It's kind of holy. It's like sacred in the same way that maybe like the Black Hills are sacred to Lakota or Chetishakoi people. And the name for this mountain, she translated it into English, is the Red Line. And I'm like, wait, what? So we got it's, and so I never was able to make the full connections between those things, but I was like, wait, so there's like a red line between all of these like very sacred places that we share as Indigenous people, even across like oceans and vast distances. And this like red line, you know, sometimes as Native people, we call it like walking the red road. You know, our organization is called the Red Nation, right? The like the red line are these like connections. They're not just political, I guess is what I'm saying. They're these connections we have with each other and like why we struggle with each other. Those bonds of like who we are, like to our foundation. I mean, like millennia old bonds to who we are at our foundation, and like the connections that we make now, those of us who are alive, the finger beings who are alive. Like decolonization isn't just about political liberation and political struggle. I think that that moment made me realize that it's about something ancient, to be really honest with you. And, you know, I've never really talked about this openly, but, you know, when I think about Palestine, like Palestine isn't just like a political issue that matters because it should matter to everyone. Like Palestine matters because I understand like this like ancestral connection, this kind of like spiritual connection that I think we have with Palestinians and that Palestinians have with us, and that we're all here trying to like walk the red line together and come together to kind of reinforce, I don't know, this philosophy of life that lives according to the red line. And that there are all of these forces, especially like mountain energy. Like mountain energy has a particular kind of force. It's like, it's so powerful. Red line energy is really powerful. And so that's just the story of just one tiny chunk of kind of the longer term understanding I have of why I love Palestine, not just in my heart, not just politically, but also like within my soul and within my spirit. It's partly because of that encounter that helped me. Whoever was like speaking in that moment they weren't human, but they were trying to give a message, trying to make it really clear, like what really is going on, what's really at stake. And so, yeah, grandma's hands and the red line.
Coincidentally, Melanie is also dressed like a grandma. Coincidence? I think not.
I think not.
That's exactly the story that came to mind when I was reading the question and asking it. That wasn't just a very extremely yoded moment for Melanie. That was an extremely yoded moment for the entirety of Red Nation. I remember that GA. Not only were people flying in from Rapid City down this red line, but a lot of us in New Mexico were driving through like Chaco Canyon area. And it was so extremely windy that you couldn't see anything. It was like driving through a fog. It felt like driving through like dimensions. It was an extremely yoded time in Red Nation. Elena, did you have any stories that came to mind? Oh, sorry, Melanie, are you speaking?
I don't even remember the question. I'm so blown away and yoded out by that. And I don't think I can follow that story. So maybe we just take another question.
Yeah, that sounds good. How do you follow up that story?
I like while I was listening to Melanie talk, I was like, I don't even remember what the question was, but damn, this is intense.
Yeah, it's it really speaks to the like just like when you choose to become an activist or revolutionary or someone that engages in these profound fights for balance and liberation, for it you don't necessarily realize that you're also engaging in this like I swear it's like this interdimensional like kind of like liberatory
Yes.
fight that exists on like multiple layers of time and spirituality, and you begin to engage with like everything that is before you but also ahead of you at the same time. It's like all of the battles and prayers of your ancestors are something that you pick up and push and move forward in like a really material but also like spiritual way. And it's not something that I was prepared to engage in initially. It's just something that you just come to
Yeah.
realize while engaged in it.
Yeah, no, it's sorry, I think I accidentally turned my microphone off earlier. My bad. But I was saying, like, when isn't the Red Nation in some sort of yoded state? I swear doing this work, like, I mean, we try not to go to Yote Town so often because if you get stuck in Yote Town, like, you cannot exist in this realm. Like, it's just like mind bending, and it can
Lost
really,
in the sauce.
you get lost in the sauce. We actually have a lot of ceremonies that kind of make sure that we don't get lost in the sauce unless you're like trained to do so, because otherwise it can like really have a strong impact on your life. And, the whole point of being alive, like in the flesh and the 3D, is to live a really good and beautiful life, and to ensure all other life has a good and beautiful life. But yeah, I agree, and it's like very interdimensional. Again, that sounds really yoded, but this has just been proven to be true time and time and time and time and time again. in the 11 years, that the Red Nation has existed. And yeah, it's pretty, sometimes I can't believe some of the things we've seen or experienced, or the dreams that we've had, or the things we've experienced together. And I'm sure, like, I don't know, I'm sure other folks who are in struggle for liberation have felt the same thing. Again, you can't just reduce it to politics. There are these other dimensions. Spiritual warfare sometimes is how it feels. Like, we're not supposed to use the word evil, for example, but shit, man. Like, sometimes you are staring down straight up evil. Like, there is evil in colonialism. There is evil in capitalism. And sometimes you have to understand it as such. And so you can deal with it as such. And we don't have to use like lists or like dense theoretical terms to understand that, and to see it for just the pure ugliness and darkness that it actually is. So, yeah.
To get like a little bit more yoded with it, it's like we are the arm of the third dimension. Like we, like our ants, yeah, like ooh. Because this is like a war that even our ancestors are involved in, like spirit helpers are involved in. And it's like we as humans are just are just part of, like I said, just the arm of the third dimension of this realm of which humans exist in. It's like it's a battle that's beyond, I don't know, it's a battle beyond our own physical realm, which is it actually is a good segue into our next question, from patron Dara, who asks, did or do you have any personal encounters with spirits or non-human beings in the dream world or waking world, and how did that impact you or inform your worldview moving forward? Let's have Elena answer this one first. I also have a response for this. And then after Elena, let's go ahead and go to Melanie, and then I'll wrap it up.
So something did come to mind when you were talking, Justine, and it was a long time ago, but it was I was in the West Bank, and it was probably one of the first ever protests that I ever participated in, and the IDF was mowing down olive orchards, and we were out there to try to protect the trees. And I was standing there wrapped in a Palestinian flag, which I don't remember where I got it. I don't remember who gave it to me, but I was standing there screaming at bulldozers and at guys in trucks with big guns. And in a moment, I had this vision that what I was looking at was Kit Carson. And I don't know really what Kit Carson looked like. I don't know, other than pictures I've seen of him, how tall he was or anything, but I was staring at Kit Carson, and I was staring at Kit Carson on horseback, and they were tearing down orchards in Canyon de Chelly. And I'm not Dene, and so that's not part of my history, but I spent a lot of time at Canyon de Chelly when I was younger, and I heard those stories over and over again. And as I got older, of course, studying that period of history and realizing, of course, that the same tactics were used on the Long Walk, and to dispossess Native people of their land, here in Turtle Island as are being used in Palestine, but I didn't know any of that then. I was very unevolved. And, but I swear for a few moments, I was staring at Kit Carson and I was staring at what happened in Canyon de Chelly. And it was the weirdest thing. I never talked about it for a long, long time. Because, when a Native person starts out a conversation by saying, I had a vision, you elicit one of two responses, and neither one of them are particularly good. But just something happened to me there. So, Justine, when you said our ancestors, are fought this fight and we're still fighting this fight for them, it reminded me that that kind of tribalism didn't matter back then. If you were Diné or you were Pueblo, the same shit was happening to all of us at the same time. So I have accepted the fact that it's not so weird that I would have had that experience, even though I'm not a Diné person. So we all, I think, grow up accepting the fact that there are things out there that are beyond our understanding. And when I was a kid, we had stories. My grandfather, my uncles, everyone told stories, and these things were accepted. No one thought this was a time for children to hear these stories because it's a particular time of year. It was just, these were stories that were part of our reality because we don't have this concept of separation between, the words that they use in English, natural and supernatural. Like everything is natural. Everything that exists is part of the world. And, we talk a lot about owls. And of course, you've never seen a bunch of Native people go, crazier than if an owl appears at any point. And I certainly, and it's not just the younger people. Like my father, who was an educated man with a PhD, and we had an owl that took up residence in a tree in front of our house years and years ago. And I remember, I swear to God, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He could not sleep. He could not eat. It was intense. And these are things that are just innate when you grow up. And so when you see something in the darkness, when you're camping, you don't question what it might be. You just say, whoa, I'm getting the hell out of here. And I think I've told this story before, even on the podcast, but I was out on the res between Chinle and Rock Point. And I was driving out to see a friend, and I saw something in the rearview mirror that scared the crap out of me. And I was driving, the roads out there. This was again 30, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Speed limit out there, there's no lights or anything. And so you're probably going 50 or 60 if you want to be sane. But what I saw in the rearview mirror was keeping up with me. And I saw fur. I saw running. I saw just like flashes of this. And I was by myself. I probably within 10 or 15 seconds was terrified, scared to death. So I thought, well, I'll just slam on the brakes, right? And I don't know what my reasoning was. Like, was it that I'm going to hit this thing or it's going to hit me? Or was it that then I can like slam on the brakes and then turn around and go the other way? I don't know what my reasoning was, but I slammed on the brakes and bam, it like hit the back of the car. And then I thought, oh shit, like maybe I've pissed it off. So I better just keep going the way I'm going and not turn around because I don't want to go back that way and see this thing again. So I kept driving and I got to the trading post at Rock Point, and I found my friend, and I was shaking, like literally shaking. And I said, this is what happened to me. And I don't know what to do, but I want to get out of like being outside. I want to go inside someplace. I need to be inside. And he just looked at me and he said, well, did you look into its eyes? And I said, no, I did not look into it. He said, oh, you're fine. Like, okay, great. Thank you so much. I okay. But I made damn sure from that moment on, I was never on those roads. Twilight, darkness, and dawn. Like, it's not just the middle of the night, folks. It's also those transition times. The dusk and the dawn are also super scary. And years later, not too many years, but this same friend of mine was out here in Pueblo country, and we were coming back from Abiquiu, and we got through Espanola, and it started to get twilighty, dusky. And he just said to me, yeah, I don't like to be out during this time of day. And I went, I don't either. Like, let's just get where we're going really, really fast. And it's just one of those things as a Native person, man, you get it because it's real and no one is going to give you heck for talking about it because we all know it's out there. We don't know what it is. We know it's out there.
That was scary, Elena. And you know what? That part of Abiquiu area at night, I've always been told not to go through there at night. And yeah, growing up, I've always been told that. And last year, when I was driving my uncle back down from Portland, that's the only way to get back home from coming from up north like that. And I was like, okay, well, let's just get through here. But I needed the bathroom like so bad. And there was that hotel next to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. And I was like, well, surely they have a bathroom and there's plenty of people in there. So I walk in there, I go into their lobby, and they're like, the bathroom's over there, but you have to walk through this room and get to the other side. And I enter this room, and on every wall around me, there are paintings of owls. Shout out to Reservation Dogs for being the first and only show that had Native people in mind by blurring out their eyeballs. That was like finally a show for me.
Right? Just censoring the owl. It's like, thank you.
All right, Melanie,
Dang.
what do you have brewing up?
Oh, God. Okay. There have been so many, I don't know which one to choose, to be honest. Are you in the mood for something scary or something wholesome?
It's Halloween.
Both.
Okay, yeah, why not both? Why not both?
Okay, shit. We have 2 hours here. I'll start with the scary one, and then I'll end with the wholesome one. So these both happened at the same place. Maybe it's not a shocker. Whatever. I'm just going to say this. Nick Estes and I used to be married, okay? And we lived in Albuquerque for a long time together. And we had, when we were both graduate students in American Studies at the University of New Mexico, we lived in this house in the South Valley of Albuquerque. And for folks who don't know, the South Valley is kind of like an unincorporated kind of agricultural district that's part of the greater city of Albuquerque, but it's kind of like semi-rural in a way. And it's a spooky, well, actually, all of Albuquerque is spooky as fuck. Okay, Albuquerque is so outrageously haunted. Yeah, I experienced so many things in Albuquerque, but this house in particular in the South Valley, it was set really far back from the street. It was on this farm that was like about 5 to 10 acres. So we didn't have neighbors in super close proximity to us. And at night, it would just get really, really dark. There were like these big, beautiful, huge trees surrounding the house. And so the house kind of felt a little rural in a way, even though we were still technically kind of like living in the city. And there was this front porch that went along the front of this house. So the house was a little isolated, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And at that time, my then brother-in-law was going through a divorce and he was living with us. And so it was me, Nick, and my brother-in-law in this house and our cat, Wilma. And there's this long front porch on that house. And so we would often like leave the screen door and the front windows open, living room. And the living room was really huge. I'm just trying to give you the setting here. So, and we would leave it open late at night. We were grad students, so we would be up until like honestly 2 or 3 in the morning, like reading for class and writing papers and shit, because that's just like student life. And so I was alone in the living room. It was maybe about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I was reading for class. And so right, the window is open, the front door is open, the screen door, is unlocked. Because we were, no one ever really came up to the house because it was really far back from the street. And we like would close the gate at night. So we weren't really worried about like trespassers or whatever. So this is fall. So it was in the semester. It was maybe like September or October. And so I'm sitting there and there were a lot of like dogs because fucking people are rugged in the South Valley. And so they would fight dogs. Like they would have chicken and dog fights, but then like dog would get injured. They wouldn't want to take care of it. And so there were just all of these like fucking pit bulls and Doberman pincher packs that would just run around the South Valley because they used to be fight dogs because Albuquerque's rugged like that. So anyway, these dogs used to run through our yard, okay, like on a regular basis. I was just really used to just like fucking dogs all over the place all the time. And so I heard something that sounded like a dog come up to like at the front porch. And I could hear it because the leaves had fallen from the trees and I could hear it crunching, walking across the leaves. But like, very quickly, I discerned that this was a really, really, really big dog. And even like you can tell with the way it was walking. So it kind of like, I could hear it kind of like run up or trot up a little bit. And then it slowed down as it got closer to the front porch. And as it was walking, you can kind of like by the sound determine its gait, right? And its gait was really long. And so it was like crunch, crunch, crunch. And the way it was walking, it was heavy. Like you could almost hear when it would hit the ground every time it was walking. And so then I was just like, I'm not sure that's a dog. Like, the hairs went up and I was like, what the fuck is that? And so I got up, I closed the front door, I locked it, and I closed the window. And I don't know, I think Nick and Corey, or sorry, I shouldn't say his name. My brother-in-law were in the back, on the back stoop, like smoking cigarettes or something. I went back there and I told them what happened. And no shit, as I think I was telling them what happened, all of a sudden, you could hear this. It was huge. This thing had gone around the side of the house to like the west side of the property line, also quite a ways away from the actual house. And it started running down the property line towards the back of the property. And this is like several acres, right? So there was a lot of space for it to run. It's hundreds of yards. And you could hear it running. And it was that thing faster than anything should have been. It was like, doo, 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 doo. Like you could hear it. And they say with like skinwalkers, they sound like thunder when they're running. Like you can hear them run. And they're running so unnaturally fast, running so fast, they break the soundscape, right? That's how fast they're running. And so this thing's just like takes off to the property line. And so Nick and Corey, they're just like, they're big dudes. They're both like 6.5 feet tall, throw cigarettes down, and they just like start going after this thing. I don't know, just no fear. And all of a sudden, I think it like turned around or something. And I didn't catch it because I was like, I ain't going after this thing. I was like, you do your thing. Like, I'm staying inside the house. Like, fuck this, And it turned around and it was running back up the property line. And they caught like a glimpse of it. It was upright When I heard it walking on the leaves, it was something that was on a board for sure. But when they saw it running down the property line, it was upright like a human. It was bipedal, as they call it. And it was weird. It was unnaturally tall, and they couldn't really like see it. But the way that it was kind of like shaped and running, it almost looked like it had like, it was part animal, to be totally frank with you. And that thing like shot down the property line. And then I think it went out onto the street, and then it didn't come back that night. And so, yeah, that whatever that was, I don't know if it was a skinwalker, because I found out later that the street right next to us, like on the other side of the property line, was like a neighborhood that was a very, very well known for brujeria. So not native stuff, by the way, but like Mexican witchcraft, basically. And there was a lot of weird shit that happened to us in that house. And so I don't know if that was like a skinwalker that had been sent. Because I've been witched like more than once in the course of doing work for the Red Nation by Native people. Those are stories for another time. Sometimes the people send you skinwalkers to intimidate you and do that shit. I don't think that's what it was. I think it was something that someone had conjured, like kind of next door or like in the other part of the neighborhood. That's what I think that was. So, yeah, good times in the South Valley. There was so much more shit. There was a portal in our yard. Anyway, I could tell so many stories about that fucking house. I love that house, but it was also terrifying to live there. There was like poltergeist activity. Anyway, so that's the first story. Scary story. Second story was a wholesome story, also happened at that house. So that first spring and summer that we lived there, we planted a really big, beautiful garden. So we had been collecting a bunch of indigenous seeds from all over Turtle Island. So we had like Pueblo corn, we had Navajo corn, we had Hopi corn, we had Haudenosaunee corn, and we had a bunch of like melons and tomatoes, just indigenous foods in this garden. It was a beautiful garden. It was right in the backyard of the house. And again, it was late at night, graduate students. Nick and I are sitting out on the back stoop, which was maybe about 10 feet from the corn. The corn was like at the height. It was pollinating. The corn was pollinating. This is where it was in its growth cycle. And I think we were both like smoking cigarettes or something, trying to wind down from like a difficult day of study and work and stuff. It was maybe about 1 a.m, I would say. And it was quiet. It was quiet, but it wasn't like dead quiet. You could kind of still hear like dogs barking in the background, the odd car going down the main thoroughfare at about 100 feet away or something. But then all of a sudden it got like quiet. Like it felt like we got blanketed in like total silence. And then all of a sudden you could hear whispering. It was like, and Nick and I like stopped, like cigarette, like that. And I kind of could discern where it was coming from. And we both like turned this way toward the corn. And I shit you not, the corn was having a conversation. The corns from different varieties, from the different nations, were talking to each other. And the corn was like one of like the tall, like Pueblo corns would be like, and then like one of the Haudenosaunee corns would be like, and they were literally like, as we watched them, because there's maybe a bit of light or something, they were like very gently, they would like lean in towards each other. And then they would start like shaking a little bit. And then they would be like whispering. And they were literally having a conversation. The corn was having a conversation with each other. I know. And we're just sitting there. We're just like, is this really happening? And then I think the corn realized we saw them and we heard them having a conversation with each other. And then they just like stopped. They immediately like froze and then like went back to being straight. And then it was just like silence after that. And then that kind of like total silence that had kind of blanketed us. Then it lifted, and all of a sudden it was like you could hear all the ambient noise again. It's like you're sucked into like a chamber, a soundproof chamber, and all of it, and you reemerge into the world. And yeah, talk about life changing. That was what the question, right? Experiencing, like, encountering like a skinwalker-esque thing, and that's not really life changing. That's like very normal and run of the mill, especially for a Navajo person. But somehow witnessing corn like talking, and I mean, I didn't know what they were saying. You know, I don't speak corn language, but that was like one of the most special experiences of my entire life. And you know, I'm kind of known for doing work on like interspecies kinship and relationality. You know, I talk a lot about like the relationships between humans and other than human entities. There's a lot more that I've come to understand about what we understand as corn actually is from like a Diné perspective. Actually, corn orders the entire universe. Like, corn is like a celestial being. It actually is a gift from the stars, essentially. And so, I don't know, being able to like just witness that, even though we probably weren't supposed to witness that, honestly, has just really shaped who I am as a Diné person, as a human being. And yeah, right, I harvested my own pollen. It's the only time I've ever had a chance to harvest my own pollen for praying and stuff, was from that corn. I still have that pollen. I still carry that pollen with me because it's like super special to me. Now I understand what the significance of pollen is. Like literally being blessed by that most sacred gift. So yeah, those are my stories.
Now, when you see spirits like that, Neff, you just pray and then tell it to leave you alone because it's not welcome here. Ooh, great stories. Wholesome story, Melanie. I forgot about that one. That was a good one. I actually have one too to add on.
Tell it.
So once again, patron Dara asks, do you have any personal encounters with spirits or non-human beings in the dream world or waking world? And how did that impact you or inform your worldview moving forward? So this story may become a little bit triggering, but it's still truthful to my life experience as a member and activist in the Red Nation. So prior to this happening, Melanie had told me about this. I think it's a Canadian documentary about these cops who were sort of going head to head with these Canadian Native activists or Indigenous activists from up north who these cops retreated because they saw behind these Indigenous land water protectors, just relative protectors, standing behind them, human living form, were hundreds of these Indigenous ancestors behind them, and they freaked out and retreated, and some of them quit the police force because of what they saw. Right? Is that like more or less truthful to the story, Melanie?
Yes, because they were like, holy shit, this crowd is way bigger than we thought it was going to be. But then when they went back and they looked at the footage, it was literally like 20 people. They saw hundreds of people. And then they're like, cannot compute. And then it just like destroyed some of their mental health. They quit the police force.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, ancestors.
Yep, absolutely. And so what I said earlier about like the yoded out, I guess, nature of native activism work, continuation of time and all these like yoded out like interdimensional interconnectedness, that analysis actually comes from real life experience. This isn't something I just heard and like made up. It's actually because in my I've actually witnessed this and actually seen how it manifests and how at times that's sort of what it all sort of comes to. So what the experience that profoundly changed me and I'm still working through is the shooting that happened back in September 2023, 10 days before the Al-Aqsa flood, when MAGA fascist Ryan Martinez came to our protest against the resurrection of an Oñate statue in front of the Espanola City building. Ooh, sorry. And he shot activist Jacob Johns in the torso, and Jacob died for like a while, but he's with us, thankfully, and he's still going strong. He's going to Brazil for COP25. So he is a failed mass shooter, because what happened that day was after he shot Jacob Johns in the torso, he pointed the gun at someone else and the gun jammed. But the thing about that day, that first of all, it was an insanely yoded day, even astrologically speaking. Everything was going backwards. I will bring astrology into this. I'm gonna plug it.
Of course, Justine brings astrology.
Everything was going backwards. Everything was in retrograde. It was a full moon. Like, come on. This is why I'm compelled to study astrology. But what it was I don't know, it was just a weird vibe that whole morning. I remember doing things, being compelled to do certain things that I just like felt I needed to do to protect myself. Like, I covered myself in a certain way. I put certain things on me because the energy was just weird. And you know, I remember I got there. I was first one in Red Nation to show up because I'm from Santa Clara. So I was staying at my grandpa's house and just went down the road to when it was starting the next morning. They had a morning sunrise ceremony that I went to go check out and attend. And some Tewa elders from Tewa Women United were they actually like called some of our ancestors to like help us and protect us. I also had someone who had helped me out and given me protection for this kind of dealing, because I had I was somewhere else and I came back to New Mexico and to do a couple things, but this happened to line up. So I was home when this happened and went to the thing. But Ryan Martinez is a failed mass shooter. And I wholeheartedly believe it's because we had like lines of our ancestors that day just backing us and really standing behind us. And the most compelling like piece of evidence that I saw when that happened, there's that famous photo of him like holding the gun, and you can tell it's within the same second or two after he had pulled the trigger the second time and the gun had jammed. But he had this look of just fear in his eyes. This is the photo that was published in the newspaper. I'm pretty sure if you Googled Ryan Martinez shooter, it's probably going to be the first image that pops up. But he has this look of just like fear in his eyes. And I just know, like with my whole being, that he probably had a similar, if not exact, experience that those Canadian cops had when facing down Indigenous people, because we're backed by all that is good, all that has persisted for centuries, for this liberatory war for liberation of our people and the land. And to be protected by that, to be protected like that, has been such a profound and life-changing experience that I've witnessed in the Red Nation, because there's just no other way. Like, there was just no other way that we would have been protected like that. There's no other way the gun would have just stopped like that. There's no other way that Jacob would have lived had it not been for these like layers and layers and layers of resistance that exist within a movement like this. But yeah, that's a scary story. TBH. Ooh, I'm shaking.
No, those things that happened in the fall of 2023 like completely changed all of our lives. Actually, the multiple things, including that. We don't talk about that shooting much. I don't even know if people remember that happened, but yeah, truly.
It completely changed the trajectory of the organization itself, and also just like the way that we engage materially in direct action and activism. It was like a definitive marker of the change of tide, and how dangerous things like things have been dangerous this whole time, yes, but that was the first encounter of an attempted mass shooting that we had encountered.
Damn.
And it was there's more to the story. There's more yodedness. There's more ceremonial medicine-y type stuff to add to this. But that is reserved for a private space, because it gets more yoded. It gets more yoded than that. We had so many people, spirits just backing us. They're like, we got you. We brought the big guns out that day. It's spiritual.
I mean, the big guns were needed because the intention that day was to kill a lot of people. Like, he had a lot of ammunition in his car. Like, yeah. What a profound, I don't know, like, I still even know how to like express gratitude to like the spirits and the ancestors that have quite literally saved our lives multiple times, I would say, at this point. And then also the lives of others who have been at Red Nation Action, where, gosh, I'm just thinking about the thousands of people, who went to the front lines in Standing Rock, for example. And yeah, I mean, we shouldn't go into it too much, because again, I think it's really just for private stuff. But, Red Nation really we kind of had to become much more serious spiritually in our work. Because it's serious. Like, it's life or death. It's life or death.
Yep. I've also witnessed maybe like a medicine person not being in a space in a correct way, where he's standing alongside cops, standing with the opposition, and it physically affected him. He was like kind of like what I was told was that he kind of went in on himself like that, because he was like not there the way he was supposed to be. He was like, you're on the wrong side, fam. You're on the wrong side, and everybody you work with knows it. Oh my god!
Yeah. Jesus. I don't know if you can hear me.
Nick, that's so scary. What are you doing?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Loki, wait. We have a new guest joining the show. If Nick, could you introduce yourself?
The name's Michael Myers. You can't even really. Yeah, this is me with my mask off, actually.
Fuck up.
So welcome. Sorry for being late.
It's okay, Nick. Go ahead.
Are you guys telling scary stories?
Yeah, actually, you joined us at the perfect.
I like everyone's costumes.
I thought you were like Custer's ghost or something.
You can't even see me laugh. This is really weird.
Sick. Custer's ghost. Elena thought fucking Kit Carson in the West Bank. Yeah, that was one of the stories that was shared.
All right. Well, I'm so glad you joined right now, Nick, because we are in the middle of one of the best questions by patron Dara. Dara asked, do you have any personal encounters with spirits or non-human beings in the dream world or waking world? And how did that impact you or inform your worldview moving forward?
That's a really good question. I don't want to get too personal, but I'll tell this story since we're telling ghost stories. My dad used to drive ambulance when I was really young, and he used to like wake up. He'd be on call, and he'd wake up, and he was on the we were on the reservation, and he would like get up in the middle of the night, and he would go onto these calls and like come back sometimes hours or sometimes even the next day, depending on how busy it was. And one night he got a call, and we were staying out like it's called the Bend on the reservation in Lower Brule, and it's like way far out in the middle of nowhere. So far out in the middle of nowhere you can see the stars pretty clear. There's no real light pollution. And sometimes we would we heard this before, like when we were kids. There's three brothers. I have two brothers, and we'd often sleep in the living room together, like after watching scary movies. And so when you turn the lights off, the whole house would just go pitch black, right? There's no light, there's no ambient light outside. I don't even think we had a security light at the time. So it was just really black. And oftentimes we would hear somebody like walking up the basement steps like this, and then they would stop, and then you hear them walking back down. I don't know if you can hear me hit the mic. I don't know if it's effective or but one night there was when my dad got called out, and this would happen, like it was happened so often that we just kind of got used to it. And it was scary. It was like really scary. Like we were just scared, like, shitless as kids all the time. And because my dad liked all the lights off, there could never just be like a hallway light on or a night light or anything like that. It was just like basically, it was dangerous too because you'd have to like go like this when you're walking to the bathroom. So one night he got called out, and it was just kind of like a normal night, and he came back like pretty late. I don't remember what time. And he came back, and he was like, he came back and opened the door and like walked through and went in his bed, and we all kind of woke up, and all of a sudden we heard, and we're like, oh my God, it's the ghost, and except we didn't hear it walk back down the steps, and we're like, oh my God, it's upstairs. So we're like, me and my brothers were all like this, like had the blanket above us like this, and we heard something like outside, like kind of rustling around, and then all of a sudden these headlights turned on, right? And you could see it through the blinds, and again, there's it's pitch black, it's in the middle of nowhere. So it's pitch black, and so my dad gets up and he's like, what the hell, he starts cussing, and we like looked outside, and it was this old, he used to have this like red station wagon, and it was actually broke down, and it couldn't start. It was like just a res car sitting in the yard, but its lights were on, and something had turned the lights on, or somebody turned the lights on, and so he got mad. He went out, and he was tired, and he went outside and like flipped the light switch and turned them off, and then he came back inside and went back to bed, and he was really frustrated. But then you know, like maybe like 10, 15 minutes later, we were like trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden we heard coming up the steps again. And you know, like we kind of like waited for a bit, heard something rustling outside again, then all of a sudden we heard a door open, like the car door was like, and then the lights turned on again. And we looked outside, and it was that red station wagon that was broken down. And my dad got really upset. He was like, you know, he's cussing around and stuff, and then he gets out, and he's like, hey, are you guys turning on the, you know, going outside or whatever, messing around with the car? And we're like, no, like why would we do that? We're like scared shitless. So he goes outside. He's really mad, and he turns the lights off, and then he pops the hood, and then he unplugs the battery for the car, and he takes the battery out and he puts it on the porch, the front porch, and he's just like really mad at that point. And then he goes back to bed, and we're all just like, what, like, what is happening? And then I think we fell asleep by that time, and then we're just like sleeping, my dad's snoring and stuff, and it's kind of a comforting sound. Dad's asleep, so we're all going to bed. And then sure enough, we heard and so we get up, and we're looking around and like, oh man, what's gonna happen? And sure enough, those lights come on, and there's no battery in the car at all. And we see in the blinds there's these like things moving in front of the headlights, like this, like casting shadows on the side of the house. And we were just like, at that point, like all of my brother and I, we were all just like quiet as hell, quiet as we can be, covers pulled over our face. And my dad just like grunted, and he's like, F that. He left the lights on. So that's the story.
Ooh, and then the car battery wasn't in the car.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And his dad liked to keep all the lights off. Okay. We have a comment from Claudia on the YouTube that says, I know this is a scary story, but the mask is sending me. Same. Oh man. Well, thank you for the story, Nick. We have been talking round got a little bit yoded on the interdimensional ancestral qualities of Native activism in movements and the Red Nation. We got asked a question earlier about our connection to Palestine, and Melanie went over the yoded GA story from I think it was 2023. But unless you want to revisit that question, I was thinking the next one would probably be a really good one. We have a question from patron Annie, which, by the way, for those just tuning in, we are taking questions from our patrons on Patreon. If you would like to support and sustain the podcast, you can always get first dibs on questions through the Patreon. So we have links in all of our bios. Please support the work. Thank you. So patron Annie asks, if you can resurrect one person to join a taping, who would it be, and what would you want to talk about? Let's go ahead, do Nick, Elena, Melanie.
So I don't think we've interviewed anyone who's died, so I don't know if resurrection is a good word. But one person that I've been trying to get back on the podcast is Vivi Camacho, comrade from Bolivia. She is working on projects related to midwifery and ancestral medicines. and protection of those medicines. And she's really changed my thinking on the way that the commercialization of indigenous psychedelics has really kind of gone off the charts recently in terms of the sort of therapy community and things like that. And yeah, I've been trying to get her on again. You know, Bolivia right now is actually pretty politically messed up, and it's yeah, I've been trying to just touch base with her. I've had some conversations with her over the phone, just checking in, but she's just such a wonderful person, very positive and revolutionary in her outlook, and very critical, but also grounded in like indigenous traditions. She's Quechua, so that's somebody I've always wanted to have, you know, back on the podcast, and I think we will have her someday. But yeah, Vivi Camacho would be my pick.
Am I next? Okay. So resurrect. I don't know about resurrection, but I would love to talk to Comandanta Ramona from Chiapas and the EZLN, just because she's been a shero of mine for a long time, and I would love to have a conversation with her about liberation and liberatory policies, politics, how women can protect ourselves and each other in movements, how women have to protect ourselves, each other, and families during scary times. And yeah, just someone I would like to sit down and have a conversation with. Short and sweet.
Thank you. Melanie?
Yeah, I feel like even though it's very taboo about bringing back though, have passed. You're not supposed to do that. The matriarch resistors of Black Mesa, all of whom walked on, bringing them on to talk about the history of that struggle firsthand. A lot of that struggle, the struggle against coal mining on Black Mesa, I don't know, it's kind of like been told through the eyes of kind of like white academics and anarchists, honestly, or like these like very ideological interpretations of it. And so I really love to interview those badass women. A more combined, LaDonna Bradwell Allard, who founded Sacred Stone Camp at Standing Rock. Yeah, really a remarkable human being, I think, who went too early, and just being able to bring her back and just, I don't know, soak in the wisdom. And a couple more were just like Geronimo and Crazy Horse. That'd be fucking dope. Yep.
Absolutely. Mine obviously is Pope. Gotta hit up Pope, talk that old Tewa, and I am like, so I've such a huge interest in how they pulled off the actual physical organization of like the Tewa runners, but also like, you know, meeting in the mountains in the cover of night, and like, and what were they talking about? Like, what was the personal, like, pivotal moment where Pope was just like, all right, no more, fuck this, get these bastards out of here, and like, let's liberate Tewa territory. And we weren't even Tewa back then. We were like our Toa Uinga, like, you know, we were our people previously. But yeah, so that would be mine. Oh my god, Nick, so scary.
I don't know how
Scary.
Michael Myers does it. I don't know how he keeps that mask on all the time.
Your costume's so scary. It got more
I was having a
scary.
hard time breathing.
All right. Okay. Let's move on. Let's get this one out of the way from patron Axel's Pizzas. Is the hip hop group Funk Dubious actually indigenous, or are they just appropriating? I don't know. I don't know who that group is. Axel's Pizzas, I'm so sorry. None of us had a clue, but you are a patron and we will prioritize your question. The answer unanimously is we don't know. Sorry. And then let's start reading some of the comments. That shit has to be hard to breathe in. Okay. Next up on our patron questions, we have Rosanna. Rosanna says, one question I have is, what do you all think of expanding social reproduction theory past just biological reproduction of children and expanding it to gender variant people and how they are also involved in social reproduction? Not really related to horror, LMAO, but it's a subject I'm studying and deeply invested in as a trans woman, and I would love y'all's input, maybe some literature y'all can recommend. I like this question. Let's go Melanie, Elena, Nick, and then I can go last.
Sorry, what was the patron's name again?
Rosanna.
So Rosanna, I actually wrote an essay on that very topic. It's called The Limits of Matriarchy. It came out as part of a series of essays, commissioned essays with First Nations Development Institute, where they asked, Native scholars from various nations who do work on various topics to think about law, like not tribal law, indigenous law, traditional law. And so they asked me to write a piece about like gender and the law. And in that piece, I do a whole critique of matriarchy and the way that matriarchy, this notion of matriarchy can sometimes reinforce kind of the centering of like cis hetero womanhood as or cis hetero women as the centerpiece of like our feminist politics or praxis. And so I drew from Kim Tallbear to talk about how, like there are a lot of people who contribute to the social reproduction of Indigenous communities. And that social reproduction, only one piece of that is biological reproduction, one piece. And so thinking through how like traditionally, like there were like really large families or communities, and that the people who took care of the multiple generations of those families or communities weren't just like the biological parent or like the mother of those people. It was all kinds of people who had caretaking roles. So thinking about how can draw from Indigenous traditions of kinship, especially when it comes to caretaking in like non-gendered ways, and kind of understand our roles in social reproduction more so as caretakers rather than like mothers, like using language that's really gendered. And so in that piece, I kind of make this case for how law, so like there's still a ban on same-sex marriage in the Navajo Nation that was passed in 2005. It's still on the books. So I kind of look at that as a case study. And then I make this case for how matriarchy, that there's space within like a queer Indigenous feminist framework for matriarchy, but that matriarchy in and of itself as kind of a theory or an approach to incorporating gender into the law, like really still just limits our understanding of gender, like the binary, and it still centers kind of like cis hetero bodies and experiences, and continues to deny like gender and sexual variance and diversity. And so what would it look like if we like had laws or we practiced the concept of law with like gender and sexual diversity, etc. So yeah, I'm totally down. I mean, I love Silvia Federici. I love thinking about gender and labor. Multiple people play very important role in the social reproduction of society and of communities that frankly have, I mean, yes, they're gendered because of like capitalism, right? Or because of like heteronormativity and heteropatriarchy, but they don't have to be. And they actually haven't been in a lot of ways historically and customarily. So yeah, you might want to consider looking into that. The title of the episode is called The Limits of Matriarchy with First Nations Development Institute. But very good question.
Amazing. Thank you. Elena or Nick, do y'all have anything to add on?
I just exactly what Melanie said. And also, the binary has only existed since colonialism and since the imposition of the motherfucking Catholic Church on, and I'm speaking as a Pueblo woman, that binary is dangerous. And that binary has put us in positions where, yes, those words are all problematic. Matriarchy, is not necessarily what am I trying to say? Okay. Matriarchy is just the opposite of patriarchy. So it is not a good substitution for what was imposed upon us by the Catholic Church and by settler colonialism. Like, we never had a binary. There is no such thing as just two genders. There's no such thing as two of anything. We are just setting ourselves up in an oppositional model, and that's dangerous. And it has really caused so much damage to our communities and to all people in our communities, not just women. Men took up the mantle of patriarchy because it gave them power, and women have been struggling to get power back. But it's a different kind of power. It's not the same power that Western civilization uses and that Western civilization imposes. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I don't want to see that binary. I don't want to see it being prevalent anywhere. And I don't want to see matriarchy be a substitution for patriarchy. I want to see our traditions of caretaking and our traditions of kinship and our traditions of relativism be predominant. And I don't know, Melanie, I think you said that a lot of that has been hijacked by Western anthropologists, and I believe that's true. When anthropologists come into the picture and start saying, well, these Native communities didn't have patriarchies before we came along, they were all matriarchies. No, they fucking weren't. Like, we were not, in that term, in that Western term, we were not matriarchies. We were caretakers. We took care of each other. We took care of the land. We took care of the living beings. And women were important, as women are always important. But to use those terms and to stop, sorry. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. That is all I can think of at this point. When we're using those terms and when we're employing the binary, it's never going to work to describe what we were, what we are, and what we can be, because those weren't our words. Those weren't our traditions. That's not our history.
Yeah, I think that's a good question too. I think I don't think social reproduction is necessarily biological reproduction, because I don't know if they're conflated in the literature, but I don't think of, like, just in a very materialist sense, that they are. And I think with the notion of the family, there's this kind of move right now to abolish the family. And I think what they mean, they should be very specific about which family they want to abolish. And if that's like the white heteronormative family, like that's cool. But you also need to remember that like Black families, Native families, colonized people's families have been under attack by policy for generations. It's part of the genocidal policy, a project of removing children from their homes, separating families, and also limiting what a family can be. And I think that there are much more expansive definitions that kind of get way too mucked up in this sort of a colonial game of like who counts as a relative and who doesn't. And I'm just not interested in any of that. And I think that's kind of what I hear some of my comrades saying here. I also would say that there are attempts to kind of push this back, and I think if you ever get a chance to read like Cuba's family codes, I think it would be good. It's not a perfect sort of model, but it's definitely like redefining what a family is. It's not just people who are in this sort of like legal institution of marriage between a man and a woman or whatever that means, but it's like people who live in community in like a shared house, that's considered a family, even if they're not biologically related. And I think that grants certain protections, but also privileges that they wouldn't otherwise be granted, that we simply don't have, in the United States. So I think there's attempts elsewhere in the world to reimagine and rethink what the family is. And I think Native families are very dynamic and fluid. And oftentimes I found myself in Native families that I wasn't necessarily biologically related to, but nonetheless share kinship that is sometimes stronger than blood. But yeah, we could get in the whole conversation about blood quantum and genealogy, but that's a horror show. So I'll just leave.
Oh, he went to mute himself and then he left. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say actually the Red Nation is one such family. Based on Nick's description, that's how I felt about my comrades for a long time. I do want to add, like, teaching this feminisms class right now, and students have a really hard time. Students with centering Native women. I'm talking about like cis-het Native women. Again, right? That kind of really limits our understanding of what, who we should be concentrating on. But you really can't ignore or pretend like genocidal policy and practices have not specifically targeted biological reproduction. Like yesterday, we watched this documentary. It's called Awe, which follows the story of the Dene woman that actually we all know. We screened this documentary when we were all still in Albuquerque at the Russian offices. Jean Whitehorse and her, journey with forced sterilization in the 1960s. And so whether it's sterilization or the fact that, in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, like child removal, which Nick just referenced, an act of genocide, the fact that more children, like Native children, are apprehended by the state in Canada than at the height of the residential school system, the high history of boarding schools and residential schools, the reason why the Indian Child Welfare Act had to be legislated into law, that, right, like a major target, right, for the colonial project has been the prevention, actually, of Indigenous people from having kids, from transforming families into basically like disappearing Indigenous people through compulsory heteronormativity and misogyny. And, I was also thinking recently about how the life expectancy for Native people, it decreased, right, by like 6.5 years after COVID. But even before that, like Native people have the lowest life expectancy of any population in the United States. And so that also makes me think about, right, how there's just this larger, if we understand settler colonialism as kind of like a project of elimination and kind of like completing that, the settler colonialism kind of finalizing conquest of Indigenous people, then you can see how just like the denial of life, whether it's like birth or even like age, live to an old age, Native people are also denied the chance to age. So being denied the chance to be born, being denied the chance to age, being denied the chance to have children, right? That this is all part of a really, really integral aspect of how colonialism has, done its work essentially to eliminate and to disappear Native people. And so even though true, like social reproduction is not reducible to biological reproduction, nevertheless, like reproductive justice for like within Indigenous communities is something that from like a queer feminist perspective, like we should still support that. It's like a really important aspect of decolonization, and just like the right to like give birth, because that's denied to so many and toxicity in the environment, right? Because of resource extraction and like stillbirths, the high rates of stillbirths in a lot of Indigenous communities, like the list can go on in terms of the ways that Indigenous people are simply just denied life because of colonialism. And so, yes, that might be intention, right? With, like this larger, like important project to like ungender social reproduction, but that needs to be in conversation with like the right to biological reproduction for Indigenous people. It's because of genocide, at least here, I don't know, in the United States.
Oh, thank you, comrades. I don't feel like I could really match the intelligence happening here. But I don't know, one thing that it does bring to mind for me as like someone who does consider themselves like non-binary, sort of within the queer spectrum, although for all intents and purposes I do consider myself fully a Native woman. It's kind of, spectrumy like that for me. But one thing I learned out here, I live in Acoma Pueblo. This is where my matrilineal lineage is, and I've been, I guess, like reconnecting in ways that I hadn't previously, now in my adulthood, and really taking up that role of what it means to be a Native woman who is in the Bear Clan, which then puts me as like a Bear Clan mother. But I'm not like, I don't believe that I'm not someone who has children. I'm not sure if I can have children, but it's like, regardless of being able to reproduce myself or haven't had done that, it's like I'm in this societal position automatically from birth that like I'm a Bear Clan mother. My role here is to caretake my family, and also like in societies that are matrilineal and do like, I guess, like honor that sort of like role of women within like, for example, here Pueblo society, it really instills that like who we relate to family wise isn't like we have the power to choose who belongs within our families, right? Like I've been adopted on my paternal side, and I'm recognized as being a child of Tsuki Pueblo, and that's a decision that my family was able to make outside of this like biological like standpoint. Like I don't have any blood quantum in Tsuki Pueblo, but I'm from there. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is and where I've been initiated into. So like here in Acoma, we also have like the same rights to determine who belongs in our family. So a Bear Clan mother who chooses to adopt somebody then brings in this person into our clan. And it's like matrilineality has always allowed us to determine who belongs, who we relate to. Yeah, I don't know. These are just random thoughts that I've had while listening to you guys. Yeah, that's what I have.
And I don't think matrilineality is the same thing as matriarchy,
It's not,
as like
yeah.
an approach to kinship, or like how you understand who your kin is, like who belongs, and how you identify yourself, like how you make relatives, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't know. I think there are a lot of indigenous understandings of just kinship that are like actually quite expansive and flexible. I actually find that like a lot of white settler queer theory kind of like steals a lot from indigenous worldviews in that sense. And so yeah, I would recommend that the patron also checks out Kim Tallbear's work, because she actually talks a lot about this in her writings.
Heck yeah. Excellent question. Thank you, Rosanna. Actually, we have a new patron on the Patreon. I think it was yesterday, that they're contributing €2 to our Patreon account. And this is a Palestinian comrade that I've known for a few years now. He asks, what is the spookiest thing about liberal solidarity? Awesome question, comrade. Liberal solidarity is a horror story in itself. Who wants to tackle this first?
I don't think we're experiencing much of that, to be honest. I think it's like in these moments of like right-wing backlash, I think we actually see liberal collaboration with fascists. So that's what liberal solidarity is. It's kind of like going where the winds blow to maintain the status quo, essentially. I just made that rhyme, by the way. That was not intentional.
Nick talks in rhymes on Halloween.
Limericks. I don't even know what that is. But yeah, I was thinking about like how even I've been following like local politics, and how ostensibly like liberal candidates are now moving to the right, or attempting to speak to an imagined sort of like right-wing base, or like how, I work at a university that constantly says it's being pressured from national politics, but when you peel back the layers, there's been no orders or directives given to them to do like to make budget cuts, to go after certain people. It's just something that they wanted to do for a long time. They just now have the excuse of like the Trump department hey, we might see that one day, the Trump administration to kind of really to basically as an excuse or an alibi for what they're doing. I also think that's sort of a way to confine our imagination of like what is possible, because it's like, oh, we can't do all of these things because we have to appeal to this imagined sort of voter base that may or may not exist, that we that are reactionary and this and that, and most people just aren't really there actually. And I think what we're finding too is that there's an attempt to like tell people to like not fight back and to not like push, when everyone who's like even fought back just a little bit has made like substantial material gains and has rolled back some of these legal or at least in the realm of the courts has rolled back some of this stuff, and also just trying to like isolate people that they want to call like militants or like revolutionaries or radicals, and just with this kind of constant repetition of like a narrative. And it's really not meant for us. It's actually meant to control liberals and like what they do and how they treat us. And so this kind of repetition of like the terrorist, oh, these people are terrorists, then becomes the justification for not having solidarity during certain times, but also limiting that solidarity when they're in power, so to speak, which means less material gains and more like symbolic symbolic changes. And I think this is just a broader tactic of counterinsurgency. And we often there's all these like manuals online about counterinsurgency, like how we read them. You can just Google counterinsurgency manuals, you can find them. There's recent ones that have been published. But what's fascinating about these counterinsurgency manuals, many of them are actually talking about nonprofits or like aid or charity. But what's fascinating about these is that we don't know we know that they're being published, and there's not a fear that they're kind of like spilling the beans of like, oh yeah, like this is what organizations, whether they're corporations or the state, are doing to quell resistance and to silence people. But what's not answered is like, who are these tactics being used against, right? They never identify who they're being used against. And so we're kind of like in this weird paranoid state all the time of like, is a liberal solidarity or a liberal alliance like a part of a counterinsurgency tactic? Are we the targets of this counterinsurgency tactic? And you can, I mean, that's just kind of, you can descend in sort of paranoia, or you can just organize with people who are like-minded. And but I do think that we have to peel back and really decolonize our minds. I used to not like that phrase, but I'm thinking more and more that it's very appropriate, because we have a generation of people, and I'm not talking about young people, but I think just generationally, this generation of people who are alive on this planet, especially in the United States, have no information literacy in terms of, and that's partly because of what has been shoved down our throats about who's a bad guy, who's a good guy, what is an actual sort of piece of information, and what is just a piece of propaganda meant to either terrorize an individual or a group of people, or get you to behave or act in a certain way. I could be more specific about that, but I'll just kind of leave it there. Like I'm really suspect of this notion of like, we have to have like alliances with liberals. And it's inevitable they're going to go to these things. You're going to have like a No Kings rally, all these other things, but it's not really the destination I'm interested in. Like it's not really where I'm like we're going. I think it's just capturing a broad sentiment of discontent that, as we've seen in the past, has been channeled towards the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, like amidst all of this, has not really been, seen anywhere in terms of putting up a substantial resistance, other than letting people, I think in some ways punishing people for not voting for Kamala Harris and not voting for neoliberalism. And so allowing the sort of floodgates to open up to kind of exact revenge on the populations that are supposed to be, their voter base, which is like poor racialized communities. And to me, that's a very sick politics, because I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Nick. Who would like to tackle this next? What's the spookiest thing about liberal solidarity?
I can say one or two things. Like Nick, I agree with everything he says. And when you were talking about the No Kings, like I actually saw a flyer for it, and just, I don't know if it made me laugh or it made me want to cry, or if it just made me sick to my stomach. But liberal solidarity is like, to me, it's just fear. They're all getting together and going down, and I'm in Ogopoge, otherwise known as Santa Fe, so they're all proud about how many people they had at the rally, both Albuquerque and Santa Fe, huge turnout. But just the flyer, remember, this is a joyous occasion of getting together with friends and people that you agree with, and no yelling, and be polite, and remember to listen. And I'm just, what's going through my mind is, that doesn't sound like actions I've been involved in that actually got stuff done in the past. Number one. Number two, are you all really thinking that this is going to somehow, the miracle of all of you like-minded people getting together and making up maybe one or two scandalous signs, but actually being polite and kind to one another and listening to one another and walking around downtown Santa Fe, which is the biggest liberal, Mordor, hellscape, racist border town that you can ever possibly be in. But we're going to make it all better by all getting together and walking from the Capitol building down to the plaza and being kind and not stepping on each other's feet. And I'm just first of all, liberal solidarity, is it delusion? Is it fear? Is it, holy moly, this stuff is happening to us, but we're like the white upper middle class people who pay our taxes and donate to the appropriate organizations, and we don't see color, and we buy directly from Native artists, and we go to the appropriate lectures at the Lensic and listen to people who come and talk to us about how hard it is to be Native in this world. How can all of this be happening to us? Like, that's liberal solidarity. And I don't even know what to say to that other than, do y'all know what's going on in the world? Are you all aware of the water situation in the Colorado Basin? Are you aware that there's going to be drilling in the Arctic? Do you know what's going on in the world? And do you think that this is all going to help? That's kind of all I have to say about that.
Kind of a mic drop situation. Liberal solidarity needs it. Seriously. I don't even know. Spooky. It's more like, it's very parasitic, I would say. Liberal solidarity is parasitic. People who like have experience doing like serious organizing, you're trying to organize like a hardcore campaign for upholding like treaties, for example. And the amount of time and energy that you are expected to give to liberal sensibilities, the liberal gaze in movement work is infuriating and absurd. It's liberal solidarity is an interloper, frankly, in revolution and liberation. An interloper, an obstruction, a complete like time suck. That's why I call it like parasitic. Like liberal solidarity doesn't even exist without like revolutionary organizing. Because I mean, liberalism is not about revolution, right? It is about maintaining the status quo. It's like, what do they call that? Different font. Damn it. How do the kids say this today? TikTok about once. You cut a fascist, a liberal bleeds kind of thing. And so I just have felt for a long time a strong desire, but also not even a desire, but how I do solidarity. Because I think a lot about solidarity. Let's take the little part of that. I think a lot about solidarity and relationality between struggles and like being really kind of militant, honestly, about who to engage in relationships with when when the stakes are really high. You're trying to build a movement or you're trying to build struggle with people. And you kind of have to have those things in place to keep liberal solidarity in check, or that will just enter your camp and take over. Like I've seen that actually physically happen in movement spaces. And then you have to end up like attending, right, to those kind of like liberal sensibilities. And so I guess it's like, what am I trying to say? I had this really cool catchphrase. Sorry, I'm getting tired because we're entering the 2-hour mark and I'm getting fatigued. My brain is kind of shutting down at this point. But it's like liberals need radicals, but radicals definitely don't need liberals, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, liberals who need them. I could also talk about injury politics and like liberal identity politics and how that sucks a lot out of like revolutionary, like potential when there are uprisings or upticks in movements, talking like US specific things here, or the way that liberals will come into like indigenous spaces and try to rediscover their humanity through playing Indian or trying to engage in like a proximity to indigeneity. And it's like, don't do that. No one asked you to do that. Well, like there are a few Indians who do that, invite those people into spaces, but we said at certain points in the Red Nation, it's like, you don't need to be Indian to be down with like decolonization. Like, why do you have to engage in these weird like identity politics in order to do this? And then you end up having to speak to those people, and then like you have to like remove them from spaces, and then they cry, and then there's like all of this stuff, and it's like, who the fuck has time for that? Like, I don't want to be putting the labor of the movement into, again, like dealing with like liberal tears, or like liberal feelings. Again, liberals need us. We don't need liberals. So why do we keep genuflecting to them? Gosh, that happens so much in all kinds of spaces in the movement, but Native people definitely do that. And it's a type of paternalism too, like just because of like the way that U.S. colonialism operates, and how the U.S. colonial state acts like daddy, basically, in Native nations, and gets to kind of like make decisions on our behalf because we're incapable of doing those things ourselves. I find that, liberals often harbor this same kind of like paternalism. And, in terms of like how Native people are conditioned to, I don't know, like prove that we're human beings who deserve like rights and dignity. And we're always like performing it, for like the liberal gaze to be like, and we have these resources from you in order to continue to do the work that we're doing. And so I'm just like very interested in turning away any type of liberalism, honestly. And, killing the liberal in your head thing might be the same thing as like decolonizing your mind. And I don't know, just go to like that full like space of revolution, like in your spirit and in your head, and then just like operate with that space. Yeah. I don't know if I said things that were spooky about it, but it really, really chaps my ass, as Justine would say.
Pretending is definitely an outcome of liberal solidarity. It actually, if you read Dina Julia Whitaker's new book, which I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, but she traces the phenomenon of pretendianism is arising from like liberal philanthropic projects coming out of Southern California in like the 1960s, 1970s. And speaking from personal experience, I know that these liberal foundations and grantors prefer pretendians over actual Native people because they appeal to that sort of, well, obviously, I mean, many of them are white, but they appeal to the sort of sentiments and the kinds of things that these foundations are looking for, often mediated by universities, and also many of them are in the creative fields of like creative fiction, creative writing, arts, humanities, things like that. So just being on a fellowship, a writing fellowship that was designated for Native American, and it was called quote unquote Hispanic. I find both of those terms problematic, but it was a dissertation writing fellowship, and two of the people who were fellows on it were like essentially white people. come to find out later, but who are now, both of whom hold prominent positions within the academy. That's pretty spooky if you think about it. It's like, I think The Pretendian is a really good horror story genre. There's a scary story called The Professor. It's in Apex magazine. It's a sci-fi magazine written by Devin Maheswa. It's a really good, like, kind of scary story. I'll post it in the chat, but yeah, I always thought that would make a really good like spooky story. And it is very creepy because they are around and you do see them like in real life, and they're like, it's like I don't know, I think of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or like that scene from like Silence of the Lambs when he's like wearing skin and like dancing around, like I think of like that's like it's body collecting, it's like story collecting, ancestor collecting. They're literally collecting the people who have passed and making up like family trees. It's pretty like macabre, and yeah, I always think about that as like a spooky, like liberal kind of fascination. Many of them are liberals themselves, or fashion themselves as sort of like ultimate libs. So yeah.
Pretendians are bone collectors, like for sure. And we're about time. I actually wrote down, and I'm trying to think about the way to move through my answer, wanting to wear skins. So it's like Pretendians are skinwalkers in a way, which is like incredibly spooky. But like I didn't talk much about recognition. So like the politics of recognition is like liberal identity politics, like par excellence, right? And so when you're just appealing constantly to liberalism when you're asking libs to like recognize your humanity and your suffering in order for them to like fund your nonprofit. I was thinking about when I was referencing paternalism. It's a type of like seemingly benevolent paternalism. And yeah, it's gross to have to like perform trauma essentially, and then pretending, and then this is where pretendianism comes from. It comes out of this exchange, this transactional relationship actually between like injury and recognition that is like baked into kind of like neoliberal liberal sensibilities when it comes to indigeneity, because then pretendians, many of their memoirs, their stories, this is why so many of them in the humanities, in the literary world, they basically divulge their traumatic, life stories. And so trauma is this like entry point into indigeneity. And then that trauma is like what gets you prizes, literary prizes. There's like awards, right? There's capital that becomes attached to injury. And then, then they like infiltrate spaces and they become more Indian than the Indians themselves. And so, it's just like it's like a witch's brew, a toxic stew of recognition and identity politics and trauma politics and I don't know, all of that. And it's like just good old fashioned colonialism. Yeah. So I guess that's pretty spooky. Ugh. Pretendians are just
Ooh, liberal soup made with the bones of our ancestors.
Gonna have to smudge.
Oh, Nick, by the way, the book you were referencing, would that be Who Gets to Be Indian?
Yeah, that's the one.
Check it out, folks. I don't really have as deep of an answer, because the first thought that came to mind for me was the scariest and most insidious ways that liberal solidarity affects not all of us, but like the spookiest thing for me is just like the normalization and the maintenance and the everydayness of maintaining the status quo. Came to me last night when I went to a relative's football game, high school football game. Of course, they opened with the national anthem, but it was just a moment. It's been a long time since I've been to like one of those things. And I'm just like thinking of the layers of which they like indoctrinate like all these youth into this imperialist project before they even have a chance to ever develop any kind of analysis on their own or for themselves. And it's just like you have like a whole entire like band class like learning the national anthem and being indoctrinated in just such a like a normalized way. But that's like the whole culture of like American football, in like, even in like a professional sense with the NFL, and it begins in high school. It begins by indoctrinating the youth. And I don't know, these football moms are going to the Walmart that have like rows of Nazi flags, aka the US flags, like from the entrance all the way to the back of the store. And it's the way that it all just like works together, the way that it's just so normalized into this well-oiled imperialist machine. The everydayness is the thing that's the spookiest for me. But yeah, great episode, everyone. We are at the 2-hour mark. I would say it's about time to call it, to wrap it up. But yeah, what are our final closing thoughts? Go ahead, Nick.
Halloween isn't a holiday, it's a way of life.
This is literally how we started the episode. This is what we're saying.
We're like every day is Halloween. That's how we opened it. We're like, as a Native person, we will always be our very zombie existence as Indigenous people within the settler state will always haunt these settler folk. Shout out to all of our patrons on Patreon who made this episode possible and what it is. Please continue to support our work. You can sustain us monthly. You can make a one-time donation on our GoFundMe. Sina, if you could get links in the chat, that'd be great. We have the Patreon, we have the GoFundMe, and we also are advertising for our executive director position within Red Media. Please apply. If you know anybody who is qualified to apply, please send them the link. Red Media is trying to expand and grow our work. That would help out the organization immensely. Shout out to all of our relatives across Turtle Island who are just existing. You know, it's that time of year for all of us. The veil is thin. I know for us Pueblo folk, we will be feeding our relatives of the past. So shout out to everybody cooking today. May everybody have their food come out in a good way. Oh, that's what I'm doing immediately after this. I'm making enchiladas and cupcakes and all that.
And speaking of that, there's like a good bone stew, not like the cursed liberal bone stew that is pretendianism. That shit is amazing. It is Pueblo bone stew. It's the right kind. It's actually good medicine. You should try it sometime. That's a bone stew to live for.
Yep.
To
Shout out
stew
to
on.
The veil is always thin for Indigenous people.
yeah.
God, it so
Stay,
is.
stay scary, comrades. Stay scary.
Stay spooky. Stay haunting these wild and settler folk across the world. Stay headstrong in the interdimensional balance of good and evil. Yeah, I don't know.
Hell yeah.
Anything else? Here, hold on. Let me do this. One more for the road. Hold on. Oh, it's not up anymore. I was gonna play the X-Files
The
theme song
X-Files.
again. Yeah.
Maybe we can sing it.
Okay.
All right, happy Halloween, comrades.
Happy
Yep.
Halloween. Everybody
All
have a good one. Be safe. Stay spooky.
Bye.